Close your eyes and imagine. What if the things in life that cause us the greatest pain, the things that bring us grief, are challenges? Challenges designed to help us grow, to ultimately become what we were always meant to be. We feel like we've been buried, but what if, like a seed, we've been planted? And having been planted, we grow to become a mighty tree. Now, open your eyes. Open your eyes to this way of viewing life. Come with me as we explore your true, infinite, eternal nature. This is Grief to Growth, and I am your host, Brian Smith. Hey there, welcome to Grief to Growth, where we explore life's deepest questions: who we are, why we're here, and where we go when this life ends. I'm your host, Brian Smith, and whether this is your first time tuning in or you're a longtime listener, I want to thank you for being here. This podcast is all about turning pain into purpose, and today's episode promises to be an enlightening journey into healing and spirituality. Joining us today is Reverend Katina Z Jones, also known as the Purple Priestess. With over 25 years of experience as an author, palmist, medium, and career intuitive, Reverend Katina has dedicated her life to helping people find healing after loss. She's not only a spiritual advisor, but also a certified doula, offering care and guidance to those navigating life's transitions, including birth and death. Reverend Katina is currently a doctoral candidate at the University of Metaphysics and a member of the International Metaphysical Ministry. Ordained by both the University of Metaphysics and the Church of Radiant Lights, she draws on a rich spiritual genealogy passed down through generations of healers and spiritualists. In today's conversation, we're going to discuss how her ancestral roots and spiritual lineage shape her work, as well as how she uses various tools like tarot, palmistry, Reiki, and mediumship to guide clients through their grief and connect with their higher purpose. We'll also explore her work as a doula, where she provides compassionate care for people at pivotal moments in life. How does this tie in her spiritual practice, and how we can all learn and embrace these transitions with more grace and understanding? So stay tuned as we explore those topics and more. And remember to continue the conversation at grieftogrowth.com/community after the podcast is over. And with that, I'd like to welcome Reverend Katina Jones.
Hi, Brian and everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited to be able to talk about this work. It's really funny and serendipitous how I came to it, because really I was trained as a writer and author for most of my career. Worked at magazines, newspapers, marketing companies, advertising agencies, all the stuff. And it's funny how spirit has a different plan in mind for you, and you always find out. It's never a secret for very long. For me, how it happened was my mother passed away in 1988. She had ovarian cancer. This was my adoptive mother. I was very close to her. Obviously, I was adopted, so but my mother, before she passed, was a very spiritual woman. She was Greek Orthodox. She believed in the afterlife too. And she always, but she was very quiet about it. She never said, I'm going to come back and talk to you and give you messages or anything like that. She just said, she just wanted me to be happy in life. Those were the last things she really said. Just be happy. And she passed, and then I was working for a newspaper in Cincinnati, and I had an assignment to go to a psychic fair. And at that point, I wasn't real convinced. I was still kind of skeptical about it all. And I didn't know about my birth family's legacy and all of that. So I went to see this Reverend Patricia, who was a psychometrist. And I don't know if you know what that is, Brian, but it's, they take an object and they feel the energy of the object and read that. So at that point in my life, I had the habit of wearing my mom's wedding ring, even though I wasn't married. And I went in there on this assignment, skeptical journalist, let's see where this goes, right? And I handed her the ring. And the first thing she said to me was, who is Helen? And that was my mother's name. And I thought, well, that was a pretty damn good guess. All right, good. I'll give her that one. And then she just went into this whole thing about, how my mother had many things to say to me about the future of what I would be doing. And she said that I would be called to this work eventually. And I was like, really? Because I think I'm a writer. And I was like, yeah, I can't see that, but we'll see, And as she proceeded to tell me things, she also said, who's Janet? Your mom wants you to talk to Janet. And I said, I have no idea who that is. And that's where she lost me. And I was like, this is nothing. This is malarkey. Okay, so I wrote this very skeptical article when I went back saying, yeah, she got these things right. But then this happened,
Hmm.
right? Flash forward a few years, 5 years later, I had a baby, my daughter Lily, who's beautiful, and I had postpartum depression. And I was starting to wonder, is this like hereditary? What's going on with this? I also started to just feel things at a deeper level. I think it was hormonal. It was,
Mm.
but my body was changing. The chemicals in it were changing. And I also felt like there was a connection with my mom. And it was interesting because one night I did wake up in the middle of the night. My daughter was talking to Yaya, who is what my mother, who, she was Greek. She would want to be called Yaya.
Mm.
Um, and I walked into the bedroom and I said very innocently, "Oh, who are you talking to? It's 2 o'clock in the morning, or like, what are you doing?" And my little baby looked up at me and said, "I'm talking to Yaya, Mommy. Can't you see her?"
Oh, wow.
And I said, "What does she say to you?" And she said, "Well, she says she loves you, Mommy." And I said, "Well, that's just beautiful." And then I said, "Would you tell her it's 2 o'clock in the morning and Lily needs to sleep and so does Mommy?" Um, I went back to bed and thought, well, that was interesting. So my mom and I had this connection and this continuing conversation. And, my later on, my marriage kind of fell apart and um, I remember being crumpled on the floor and saying to my mother finally, like, why is this happening? Why is this a mistake? And what did I do wrong? And she was like, "I'm so glad you finally asked. Now I can tell you."
Wow.
And she
Okay.
led me to the love of my life, who I have been married to now for 28 years.
Wow.
And yeah, I ordered him off the menu at a restaurant. Um, but it was beautiful. And she's the one who picked him for me because she knew that, they say you marry one of your parents. And I kept marrying my dad. I married him twice and then finally learned I needed somebody more like her, and so that really saved my life, the first time. But it was interesting because during that postpartum depression phase, I found my birth family. And when I found my birth mother, the first thing that I found out was that her name was Janet.
Oh, wow.
Of course, then I was like, oh my God, I owe Reverend Patricia a huge apology, because she totally nailed that. My mother did want me to talk to my birth mother. She wanted me to meet her and heal that you know and it was a difficult relationship. I mean, we met, it was very beautiful, but it also had periods of abandonment again because she still had issues that she was working through, and never really worked all the way through, unfortunately, most of her life.
Mm.
And so, when I got the family history, I looked and I saw all of these ancestors that were herbal healers and the spiritualist guy. And that's the one that is my spirit guide. His name is Marcellus. I have his picture. I'll show you.
Yeah.
Can you see this?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
There he is. Um, Beautiful person. He was a wholesale grocer, and he got called to build a church, a spiritualist temple in Boston at the turn of the century. And it was a Christian spiritualist church. So he kind of pissed off both sides, like that.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah.
He was an interesting guy.
I didn't know
And
there's any such thing as a Christian spiritualist. Yeah.
well, he believed that Jesus coming back to the apostles after his death was proof of life after death.
Sure.
And so to him, that was the penultimate spiritualist experience, So he built this enormous temple, which is still standing and is now a Montessori school in Boston. And anyway, he had this legacy, but one of the things he really wanted to do was do a hospice. He wanted to start hospice in America. And back then that was unheard of. He was way ahead of his time. And so when he found me, he was pretty excited because then he found somebody who he could call to do this work. And then I got the calling to do it. And that was when I was working at a newspaper called the Akron Beacon Journal, which won a Pulitzer, not with me. And um, I was placing the obits, believe it or not. That was part
Hmm.
of my job. I had two different jobs in the marketing and advertising department. One was working on the real estate publication, and the other half was placing the obits. And um, the interesting thing about that was I would get the photographs, and I would get the obits from the funeral homes, and then I'd have to do the layout, for the paper because it was done on the computer at that time. But then I'd have to run upstairs with the photos and make sure they all matched up with the obits and stuff. And I felt like, wow, this is kind of holy work in a way, it's very important. People's memories are important. People's grief is important. And so after that, I got the call to go to the hospice. I had met people that told me, "Oh, you need to go do this. You need," and you hear it, you keep hearing it, and you keep hearing it. People keep coming to you, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, and I don't know why I'm talking to you about this, but I feel comfortable sharing it. And I would meet people on the airplanes, and they'd sit next to me, and I'd be like, "Why? What am I, the travel agent for death here?" I mean, but I started to get it. And I did the hospice work. I got trained. I did it for 5 years. It was one of the most beautiful experiences I ever had. My husband was nervous at first because he said, I don't want you to come home depressed every day. And no, it was the total opposite because
Hmm.
you have the most real conversations with people when they're there. There's no time for the other stuff. And there are things that they share with you that they can't share with their families, or that they feel that they need help with.
Hmm.
And so you have this beautiful connection with people and they become your friends, like they're all still my friends.
Hmm.
And what I learned, oh gosh, I learned so many things there, but I learned that there's so much more than what we see. Um, that the people that are dying often know a lot, when they're going through that process, they have the gift of knowing things and knowing when approximately they can feel it. Um, it's different when people are lost in a traumatic or sudden way.
Hmm.
That's a lot more interesting in a way because they are snapped out of their body and they have this really literally out of body experience. And like my ex-husband, for instance, passed away suddenly last summer. And this was Lily's dad. And he was just sitting in his barn having a cigar and a beer. Our daughter had just gotten her master's degree in teaching, and we had all been together that weekend in Atlanta and celebrating, and it was all good. And then he went home and was just relaxing, and all of a sudden had a massive heart attack. And it was interesting because as soon as I found out, he came through. This is what happens with me too, is like for some weird reason they like to talk to me about their death story, their passing. So I get this immediate download of, okay, he was sitting there and having his cigar and his beer, and he thought it was the beer at first because he felt this cold going up his arm.
Hmm.
And he was like, "Ooh, that was weird." And then he felt himself almost like pass out, but then he saw the creek across the street.
Hmm.
And he thought, well, that's interesting. And this was a guy who was a computer programmer. So he's like more like a scientist, more analytical. So he was like, this is very interesting. And then he said it was like Google Earth. He just kept going up and up and up higher and could see more and more and more of the area where he was living. And he had realized that at that point, oh my gosh, am I dead? That's when he had the first thought. And then he understood that, yes, that's what it was. And he felt okay, felt good, you
Hmm.
know? So he wanted very much for our daughter to understand for her healing because it was
Hmm.
extremely traumatic for her to understand that it was it was so peaceful and so fast that he didn't even have time to really process it fully until he
Yeah.
got up there. And so, but he also wanted to let me know that, well, he lets me know a lot of things. He likes to sit on the edge of the bed at 3 a.m., and have these chit chats. But he'll say things like, um, I was lamenting the fact that I don't have any grandkids yet. I have 4 kids and no grandkids. And he was saying, "Oh, don't worry, you're going to be a grandma and you're going to love it."
Hmm.
He's already met the grandson.
Oh, wow.
So, he knows that these things are happening. And I'm a little jealous, to be honest, because
Yeah.
he's getting the preview and I'm not. Um, but a year or so ago, I started the groundwork for doing this business where I would make good on the promise to spirit that I would come back to this kind of work.
Hmm.
Because I had been a writer and I was doing that for a long time. And so there I was starting the groundwork for all of this. I went to the Death Doula training, got certified, did all the things, um, really resurrected my spiritual tool game, because like I had been learning all along the different modalities and just learning how to read and learning how to be a medium and learning how to get to that frequency where you can continue conversations with people.
Hmm.
And this is what I tell people, and that's why I love when you said continuing the conversation. That's one of the things I tell people all the time: continue your conversations.
Yeah.
Almost every time somebody loses somebody, that's the first thing I say, because we can heal so much in that realm. Sometimes we can heal things that were buried in human life,
Hmm.
and they come up for healing in this scenario because that person is in an elevated spot now and can see it differently. Um, I had that experience with my own father. He was a stoic Greek man, really had a lot of things that he kept inside, had a lot of bottled anger, and would sometimes have outbursts and terrify me as a child.
Hmm.
And it was traumatic. And when he crossed over, the first thing he said was, I told them that if anybody could hear me, it would be you. And then we proceeded to have a conversation. And over the years, we've had deeper ones where he's told me things like his mother used to dress him up as a little girl because she wanted a little girl so badly.
Wow.
And she would, until he was almost 4 or 5 years old. So if you can
Mm.
imagine how humiliating that was for him.
Right.
Like he had curls, he had dresses, and it was like a complete invalidation of who he was.
Hmm.
And he shared that with me and said, "This is why I was angry. I never could verbalize that, but this is why I was angry."
Right.
And it was a deep wound. And his sister was born a few years later, thank God.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
got to be a man the rest of his life.
Right.
But and I've had wonderful experiences with her as well. I mean, it's I helped her in the last year of her life, especially. In the last 3 months, I spent with her in Ohio and helped her get into hospice and all of the things that needed to happen to help her. She ended up, unfortunately, dying from COVID. Um, but and you would think you don't have the normal closure with
Right.
COVID.
Right.
We didn't, a lot of us didn't have that. And that's one of the other reasons I kind of got called back to this work because, we need to be able to help people remotely. We need to find new ways of doing this. But my aunt, when she passed, same thing, came to me right away. First thing she said was, "I can't believe you all did these things for
Mm.
me, you know." And she was looking at all the good caregiving she got and all of the people that were in her life, and she was very grateful.
Time for a real quick break. Make sure you like and subscribe. Liking the video will show it to more people on YouTube, and subscribing will make sure you get access to all my great content in the future. And now back to the video.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really, and I appreciate you telling the story. I think it's really important because I talk to so many people who say that they have unresolved with things with people who have passed, and then it's too late.
Yeah.
We can't continue the conversation. There are things I want to say to them that I can't say to them. I know a lot of times when people, and maybe this has been your experience also as a medium, when people say
Mhm.
to you, tell them, whatever,
Yes.
tell, and what's your response when people say that to you?
It's funny because they almost always laugh back. Like I laugh and then they laugh.
Yeah.
Spirit,
Hmm.
because they're saying, look, where I'm at, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really doesn't matter anymore because all of this stuff is almost like a play. It's like Shakespeare. We're here to volunteer for each other, to help each other grow, and to help our souls and spirits stretch.
Hmm.
And sometimes things happen that are learning experiences. And, it's okay that that happened. But also, when they cross over, they can see inside your heart.
Hmm.
They know what your intentions were. It's all clear now.
Hmm.
It's like the fog lifts and they go, oh, that's why that happened.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
no big deal. I know that person is sorry and they love me,
Yeah.
you know? Um, and I think that's the thing that is the most healing to hear because for them, they think we're stuck and they think that person is also stuck when they cross over, but
Right.
they're not stuck in that anymore. They're free from that.
Right.
And just like they're free from their body, that's just, this is a loner. This is what I always tell people. This is a loner here, you
Yeah.
know?
Well,
But
and I
their
think
souls,
another
yeah,
good, really great point that in your story is like about with your father,
yeah,
is once we understand, and I've heard people say this, if you understand where that person's coming from, then there's really nothing to forgive because we
right.
understand that people we're all doing the best we can. From our perspective, it
Yeah,
doesn't look like it sometimes, right? We think, okay, well,
right.
they're really not trying very hard.
Yeah.
But you find
Yeah.
when you find those things out, the it just goes away. Everything that is to be forgiven just kind of goes away.
What was interesting was I acknowledged it for him. And
Mm,
I said, I'm so sorry that
mm,
that happened
yeah,
to you.
yeah,
And, the mother in me wanted to hug my father and say, it's okay.
yeah.
I get it. It's okay. And that was a beautiful moment of healing between us. And we are so good now. I
Hmm.
mean, we had several issues while I was growing up and while, later on as an adult even, and even when my aunt was struggling with the Alzheimer's, we had some issues because he was starting with dementia and he didn't know how to interpret the things that I was doing or where I was coming from.
Hmm.
And instantly that was all cleared up. And it was so beautiful. And but I get people asking me all the time, well, how do you do that? How do you get to that point? Well, you have to be on that frequency to even connect, to be able to talk, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it's like being on the radio station. You need to tune in, and how you do that is through regular meditation, regular practices that really elevate your frequency level because you need to be on that level. It's like Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, then you have to understand energy, frequency, and vibration.
Hmm.
So we have to get on that plane and on that level to be able to do it. And once we do, it's like on autopilot. For me, the weirdest thing is that it happens. I happen to be on the same frequency when I'm driving. It's the same brainwave that I'm using, apparently. Because when I'm driving in my car, that's when they all start talking to me a
Hmm.
lot.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so and I guess it's because my attention is focused that way, and so all of a sudden I'm on that channel and they just start talking and telling me things. So I'm like sitting in my car having these conversations. Thank God we have, like Bluetooth in the car now so people don't think I'm crazy. But we do have some deep, good conversations, and I like knowing that I'm never alone.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, there's a comfort in that, there really is. And to know that I'm supported and everyone is supported by their team of, or I call them the committee. You've got your committee of your ancestors, your guardian angels, you've got ascended masters, you've got people who are just um, random people that you touched. It's amazing. Sometimes they come back and just say, hey, thanks.
Yeah.
That was cool.
So I'm curious, when you were doing your hospice work and people were crossing over, did
Mm-hmm.
people come back to you, and say thanks for doing that, or did you have
Mm-hmm.
any experiences like that?
I had a real interesting one where a guy had lost his wife and that was the love of his life. And he kept asking me, how long does a guy like me stick around a place like this?
Hmm.
And I said, look, it's however long it's supposed to be, So, I mean, I can't tell you that. The doctors can't tell you that. Only you could know.
Hmm.
A couple days later, I came back and found out he had fallen out of his bed and passed away.
Oh.
And I thought, well, that's really sad, and I was sad for him. And I went to the chapel and I even connected and I just said, I just want to say, I'm sorry that happened to you. And, you know, that was terrible. And he laughed and he said to me, you think that was an accident?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So I was like, oh, well, are you happy to be back with your wife? Yes.
Yeah.
It was where he needed to be. And that was all it was about. And, could I tell anybody that? No, because I didn't think they would. First of all, I didn't think they would believe me, but,
Yeah. Yeah.
although at the hospice, they do believe a lot of things. They
I
do
I've
because
heard,
the nurses have seen it.
yeah, that's what I've heard, that the nurses, they do have these experiences, because they're in there, they're with the patients, and they're not trained as much as the doctors to not believe, I guess. But
Exactly.
I know a lot of nurses, they'll say, it's been my experience, I have to believe it."
Hmm. And, I mean, I've been there and guided people through, and the most incredible experience I had was seeing the Archangel Azrael on the other side of a woman's bed.
Hmm.
I had never seen an archangel before.
Mm-hmm.
And he was 7 feet tall, very, very thin, very somber, no wings, they weren't necessary. I guess,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but never looked at me, never engaged with me. It was clear that I was just to be there as a guest.
Hmm.
Not even, I mean, I felt like I could even be kicked out if I did anything wrong. But like there was a clear understanding that day. And my spirit guide had told me earlier that day, this is graduation day.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, that's what Elizabeth Kubler-Ross used to use as her phrase when people passed. That's graduation. So I thought, oh, somebody's going to die and I'll be there. I didn't think um, that this was also my graduation day, but it
Really?
kind of was.
Yeah.
What an honor. What an awe-inspiring moment. And I can't even tell you how profound it was. And it took me years to figure out who he was. It wasn't like I knew instantly or anything. He never
Mm-hmm.
identified himself to me or anything. All I did was give her the words to be able to go with this spirit and go up the staircase and go through the door with him, you
Mm.
know. And as soon as she did, she flatlined.
Wow.
And then I panicked because I thought, oh my God, I've killed someone. I mean, I didn't know what to do, So and I was like, okay, I got to run down the hall and tell the nurses to call time. So I
Mm-hmm.
ran down the hall and they were all crying. And I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were close with this woman. And they said, no, we had the room monitor on and we heard everything. And it
Oh.
was beautiful. And I didn't even know what I was saying.
Wow.
I just remember telling her about this spirit. I was describing him, I think, and then I said to go with him, but
Mm-hmm.
and that I would be there with her family. I think I said that too. And when they came back, because of course they had just gone to lunch.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about that, because I've heard that, sometimes people will feel guilty because they've sat vigil for so long, and but they just went to get a cup of coffee, or they went home to
Right.
shower or whatever, and then, oh, I missed it.
Mhm. Yeah, they didn't really miss it because first of all, the last sense to leave is the sense of hearing, and it goes 3 hours later.
Hmm.
So they can still hear you right after they passed. So I always tell people, please be careful what you're saying. Please think about what you're saying because sometimes the family fights start immediately, right in the room at that
Mm-hmm.
moment. I'm like, do not do that, please. Be respectful, say what you need to say, and know that they hear you because there is actual scientific proof of that brainwave measurement. 3 hours is it. So that's an important thing. But I always say, look, The reason that happened is because they could feel your energy holding them in the room.
Mm-hmm.
They can feel that, and it's oppressive to them, and they want to go to the other side. They're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
So they look for the first moment of freedom to dash, and it's usually when the cup of coffee happens or somebody's out in the hall or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they knew that you wouldn't let go any other way. And that's not a bad thing. It just means that you love them so much you didn't want them to leave. And they know that, but they also know that it's time.
Right. Right.
And they also know that they're going to come back and be there for you and tell you the same thing. They'll say, it's okay to go, you know?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, for us, we want to hold on to people for as long as possible, almost no matter what state they're in. Now, I lost both my in-laws to dementia, and so it does get to a point where you're like, okay, it's time.
Yeah.
But I think in other cases where their minds are still with us, it's hard for us to let go. So
Mm.
what do you say to a family, or what would you say to the family listening that's got someone that's in hospice? They're at the end. Is there something we can do to ease that process?
Yes. Yes, you can invoke ritual. You can do something like a legacy project. You can put your energy into um, celebrating who that person is while they're still here on their way
Hmm.
out. You
Hmm.
know, um, Instead of focusing on the lost part and saying, please, please don't leave me. And, I mean, if you know they're going and you know they're going to be well and whole again on the other side, that's the thing to focus on. um, but also the gratitude, the extreme gratitude that you have for that person. If they can take that energy with them when they cross over, what a blessing. That's so much better than taking that negative stuff and the grief and the guilt, because then they feel like, oh, I feel bad I left this.
Hmm.
But they know that the power of gratitude is it's like unconditional love.
Right.
That's the
Right.
highest vibration that we have as human beings. So if you can focus on a way to give them that as a gift on their way
Yeah.
out, honor who they are and what they would want, really come at it from their point of view. Ask them, what kind of things do you want? You know, do you want
Hmm.
angels all around in the room? What do you want? And
Hmm.
invoke that for them and create that for them in the best way that you can. That's why I say that the end of life planning is so important and so critical. And that's why I do that too, because, and I work with ThanaCare to do that, but we create like an online, it's almost like an online journal of what do you want? What are your wishes? Yeah,
Hmm.
you've got the regular legal documents in there, but you've also got a beautiful video that somebody does and says, here's what I want. So that there's no argument. You can see the person literally doing this. And
Hmm.
it's all accessible with a QR code. So, if they have it on their phone and they're in an accident somewhere, the doctors can access it. They can know, oh, this is what this person wants.
Okay. Yeah.
And so they can get all of their end of life documents, but also they can see the video of what they literally want. Um, and I think that that's really important. I think that we do a huge disservice in our society where we don't talk about death. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's the thing that's going to happen after we go to the gym, or after we are done with most of our life goals, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But it's really something we should not be afraid to talk about. We should talk about what we want and how we want it to be. I told my kids, and it's in my documents, that there must be a Katina Z Jones end of life clearance sale, and it must be called that with a banner. And like after they take the things they want, they just sell everything else. It's like that one last garage sale in my honor.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want that. I have a playlist, for the funeral. It's, I think, an important thing to do. When we don't do that, we leave it up to other people, and then they always wonder, did I do it right? You know, did I honor this person as well as I could have?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. That is a gift or a service to the people that we're going to leave behind. because as you said that a lot of times the family fighting starts right away, and
Yes.
then there's the guilt
Mhm.
and what did they really want, and did I do it right?
Yeah.
But there's this reluctance, and I remember when I was younger, even getting life insurance or doing a will. I'm like,
Mhm.
because you feel like it's bad luck, right? If I do a
Right.
will, I'm going to die. So if I don't do the will, then I'll never die.
Yeah. Yeah. And any one of us who have ever seen what are those movies called? The Final Destination movies. We know that there's never a plan, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Then you can never plan what randomly could happen. Um, so it's always good to have those kind of things on hand, or at least have a general idea of it and express that to people so that they know. I do think that there are so many tools, and this is what I kind of did. I'm trying to do with my business. I'm like pulling together things that are more practical, the practical
Hmm.
side, and
Hmm.
mixing it with the spiritual side and saying all of these things work. All of these
Yeah.
modalities can work. It's just what you feel comfortable with. So some people I do the mediumship with, and some people I do not,
Hmm.
you know. We especially with the doula work, it's you've got to meet people where they are, and you've
Hmm.
got to be able to help them to best express who this person is and who they continue to be.
Yeah. Now, for people that don't know about what a doula is or what a doula does, when do people call you in, and what service do you provide?
So it's really providing that service in the gap between hospice care and family care. Um, it's non-medical assistance, so I'm not giving any medicine to anybody or anything, but I am helping them to become more comfortable. So it may be rolling up a pillow, rolling up a towel underneath, doing the things that are practical that help ensure their comfort.
Hmm.
Um, but it's also about respecting the process and talking to the family about that and educating them and saying, okay, here's what is likely to happen next. Here's what you can expect. Hospice can do that to a certain degree, but they have now a time limit that they can spend with people because they're more corporate now. And so they have different things that they have to follow. And, there's a lot of HIPAA requirements and also insurance requirements that they must follow, right?
Hmm.
in in my case, I don't have limits on the time that I can spend. Um, so I can be there for the family throughout the process, and I can help them. I can be on call with them and say, okay, here's what's happening right now. If they tell me what's going on, then I can say, okay, now is a good time to do this or that. Now is a good time to call the hospice nurse back in, because if the blood pressure is going down, we know that that's definitely a sign. It's really being there to be a handholder. And what birth doulas do is they guide new life into being. They're midwives.
Hmm.
I like to call this being a midwife for the soul
Hmm.
and helping the souls back home.
Yeah, I love that you said back home, because we think of birth and death as opposites, right? You come
Yeah.
into the world and you become into being, and when you die, you're going out of being.
Hmm.
But it's not. You're being born into a new world, so you're actually helping that soul. So, and I think that's a big, big part of our grief, because we grieve because we miss our loved ones, and we're going to miss who they were physically when they were here. But there's
Hmm.
also this a lot of people don't have an understanding of where they are, so they're gone, right?
Yeah.
They were there and now they're gone.
Yeah. And think about what I was saying about my daughter talking to my mother.
Right.
You know how healing that was for me? I mean, I didn't realize it even in the moment because I was kind of sleepy. But in the time since, of course, I've just been, I marvel at that. My daughter has no memory of this now as an
Hmm.
adult, but it's something that'll stay with me forever. And the fact that my ex-husband has met my grandchild already, that's kind of cool. So I know they're close. And that is home,
Hmm.
you know, and when people cross over, there is such a sense of relief. It's weird because as humans, our first instinct is to like pound on somebody's chest and get them to start breathing again, right? We want them
Right.
to, yeah, we want them to come back. We don't want them to go. But when you realize, and I had this experience with my own mother when she passed, because I felt like I wanted to do that. And then later on, as I stood in the room, I could feel that was my first instinct. The second one was to stop breathing myself.
Right.
I had to tell myself to breathe. And then the third thing was I realized I could feel her spirit about 3 feet above her body. I could not understand why at the time, but that
Mm.
is where they hover right before they, and in that 3 hour period where they still can hear, that's where they are. So I could feel her up here,
Mm. Mm.
which was real unique. And now that I've been with people who are dying in the hospice and, at home, I can feel that same kind of energy, 3 feet above, and
Mm.
I can feel them starting to elevate. And it's good to be able to talk to people about that process as it's happening so they understand it too. And they can say, oh, now I understand why I feel that because
Right.
I can feel them around me still, you know. Um, they stay in your energy field for a while. And
Yeah.
that's what, when we do Reiki, that's what we try to do is remove any of those kind of attachments too, because, you want to be able to let them go. And you want it to be a free-flowing communication, a
Mm.
two-way thing.
Hmm.
You can't hold them in, you know?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that a little bit more because there are I've heard people say, "Well, I don't want to hold them back, right, from where they're going or whatever." So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm a psychopomp, so I mean, my whole thing is, I've gotten a little bit of shamanic training on that too, where you actually do this the spirit release, the soul release,
Hmm.
and let that spirit go, um, because people tend to hold on and hold people back, and I think that that is a disservice. I think that that's a selfish move, and the reason we do that is because we're afraid we're going to lose them forever, and what we
Right,
don't understand is that's impossible.
right, right.
That's impossible. You can't lose them forever. I can't shake them off when I want to sometimes. I'm like, hey, the first time I went into the hospice, I could hear everybody. Just, they were all excited that I was there. I almost turned around and left.
Really?
I
Wow.
was in the parking lot and I said, I can't do this, guys. If this is gonna be what it's like, I cannot do this because it just freaks me out. And so they were like, okay. Oh no. So then from that moment on, I learned too that if I went into the chapel first and did like a kind of an opening up to serve,
Hmm.
to be there, then all the things that happened to me, I could leave there too before I went home. So I
Okay.
didn't carry it with me. I didn't carry everybody with me. They just come and go
Mhm.
freely, like any of us should. So that's what I tell people is you got to give them the space and trust that they'll always be there.
Right. So I know you do death doula or the doula work and you're a medium, but you also do you mentioned that your different modalities in terms of healing. I know you do Reiki. What other modalities do you do?
Well, right now it's pretty much the Reiki. I do the
Hmm.
oracle readings, and I
Okay.
love to use medicine cards for those because I feel like what this world needs right now is more of the medicine. How do we heal the things that are going wrong in the world? And within ourselves, how do we become better people and better humans and better spirits that help other spirits? Because that's ultimately what we are, right? you know, this is, like I said, this is the window dressing, this is the loaner car. What we are is the spirit that's inside, and that part is eternal.
Hmm.
So, uh, as we, progress on our journeys, it's important to learn how to be better at all of it. And how do we do that? Well, we do that with gratitude. We do that with unconditional love. We do that by the highest vibrations we can achieve and getting there and trying to stay really far away from those really low ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those low ones, they're the easiest, right? It's the rabbit hole. But if we can stay out of that rabbit hole and stay higher, we will find that we attract more goodness into our lives. We attract more abundance into our lives, but we also attract all the good that the universe has to offer, including continuing support and relationships that we thought were gone forever, but they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. So
They're always.
I know you do some, or you talked a lot about ancestral guidance. So, and you mentioned earlier, we're never alone. And a lot of times we feel like we're alone, and we're
Yeah.
told, but we feel that way. So, how does ancestral guidance? How can we get more guidance from our
Mm.
ancestors?
That's an interesting question. I often joke that Marcellus and I are in couples counseling, because he was a vegetarian. He also did not like caffeine. He does not like that I use caffeine at all. He would prefer that I not do that and be a vegetarian
Mm,
like he was. He felt that those things, those energies interfered with his spirituality.
hmm.
And so for me, I don't agree on that one, but we agreed to disagree, and so we're good. But how do I use that? And how do I honor him? Obviously I have a framed photo of him, and I'm lucky enough to know who he is. Not
Hmm.
everyone is lucky enough to know or have a photograph or, any kind of element like that. But what you can do is you can create an altar space in your home. And I've written books on feng shui too. So like I know that it's important to have a spiritual place, a corner in your room.
Hmm.
So you create that space for them. And he's got a space of honor on my altar. And so I'll light incense by him, and I will talk to him, and I will ask him for guidance. A couple weeks ago, I was really down about some things, about just the state of the world. I was thinking about it, and I was like,
Hmm.
oh, some days it's so hard to just get up and want to do anything.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so when I'm having a dark night of the soul like that, he's the guy I'll go to, and I'll say, look, I need you to bring, I need all hands on deck, first of all,
Hmm.
if it's
Yeah.
really a bad one. But if it's just, moderately bad, I'll say, look, I need you to give me some downloads, give me some dreams, give me some experiences, give me something that tells me why I need to keep going,
Hmm.
why I need to keep doing this. And almost always, immediately, something happens, like I was asked to do a celebration of life ceremony for somebody in my neighborhood, and it's a beautiful thing.
Hmm.
Really excited about it, and because she was special but in such an ordinary way,
Hmm.
and such a beautiful way to celebrate that.
Yeah.
And it was fun to be able to create things. Like, she used to wear a bow in her hair, and so we're going to have bows everywhere, and,
Yeah.
to celebrate that and celebrate who she was.
So, Katina, you mentioned earlier about we're here. I believe you said to learn. You talked about
Mhm.
these bodies are loners and stuff,
Yeah.
and you also talked about sometimes we all get down. We all get kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
this is too much. So, what is the reason? Why are we here? Why are we doing all this?
We're here to learn unconditional love, number one. And when we achieve it, some of us achieve it really fast, and some of us only want the experience of being born.
Hmm.
So some spirits volunteer to do that, and they just have that experience of being born, and maybe it's to teach the parents a lesson of some sort, um, a lesson about appreciation of the small things, or you know, e- everyone has their meaning, everyone has their mission, and we tend to volunteer in groups to do the same sort of play again.
Hmm.
Only this time you're going to be the mom and I'm going to be the kid, you know? And
Yeah.
so we do these things for each other, but we help to exercise and expand the soul and expand our non-human capabilities, our spiritual capabilities. And I
Hmm.
think it's all about being able to elevate those. It's all about upping our game. And when we reach that certain point where we are at the highest level, like I think Wayne Dyer probably did before he died, reach that level.
Hmm.
you become more or less an ascended master. You become a guide to others from where you are, and or from the legacy that you left behind, even,
Hmm.
that's possible. So some of us are here for a short time, some of us can be here for a long time. And it's all about the lessons. It's all about how we lift each other up.
Hmm.
Um, it's the things that we do for each other, because when we cross over, that's the movie we get to see, right? The life review. And I used to joke about that and say, well, there are a few people I'd like to bring the popcorn for.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but the reality is we're the ones who judge us. We're the ones who sit with our angel and say, "Ooh, that was weird that I did that. Oh, that maybe wasn't the best choice. Maybe next time I could do that differently." If there is a next time.
Right. Right.
Because sometimes there is, sometimes not,
So when it comes
depending on
to
how we ascend, you
yeah,
know.
so yeah, so when it comes to that, because I had a friend, every time I think about reincarnation, she comes to mind. She had a really rough life. She had gone through a lot of illness and poverty and all
Mhm.
kinds of stuff. And whenever anybody would bring up reincarnation, she would just start crying. She said, "I don't want to ever come back here again."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, some people look at reincarnation as a punishment. What is
Mhm.
your thought on reincarnation?
Well, I always say I don't know what they said to get me to come to this life and this world at this time, but whatever it was, it's not going to work again. You know, it's just not, I'm not doing it. I want to go to a higher place where people are nicer, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
because wow, this place has been a real learning experience, right?
yeah.
And um, I do think that we have choice. I do think that.
Hmm.
And we do volunteer, and maybe it's because of those other people that are in the circle and we don't want to let them down, because if we're not in that, then it might upset the balance of what they need to
Right.
learn.
Hmm.
So, and they did it for us, so now we got to do it for them. We have an obligation, kind of. Um, I also think that we sign up because we just want to learn more, and we want to there were good parts about life, and we remember those too, and we go, that wasn't so bad. You know how you have a bad experience and then later on you kind of look back and, yeah, that wasn't as bad as I thought.
Right. Do
Yeah.
you do you know the movie What Dreams May Come?
Yes,
Okay, I think that's one of the best movies ever.
I do
And
too.
when you said that, I just thought about them because after all the hell that they go through,
Mhm.
and they finally get to where then they're like, let's do it again.
Let's do it again.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember I'm part of an organization called Helping Parents Heal. So
Right.
we've all lost children. And we were at our first conference. We're all sitting around and everybody was like, I'm never doing this again, because when losing a child is like, I would never
Yeah.
go through. And of course we all said that. And then I started thinking later, as it's been 9 years since my daughter passed now. And
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't say never anymore because
Yeah.
you don't know. There are good parts of life. And when
Yeah.
we're here, we focus on the negative. That's the way our brains are. It's the way we're wired. But I think once we get back to the other side, we realize, all the good that was accomplished and the lives that we touched and stuff like that. And maybe we've had a little vacation, back
Yeah.
there. We're
Right.
like,
Right.
okay, yeah, maybe I'll do it again.
Yeah, I'll do it again. And the thing is, you don't know. Your daughter may be the volunteer for you in your next life to help
Yeah,
you through something. And so once you start to understand that it's all part of this intricate play,
right.
um,
Yeah,
then
well,
you see it differently.
yeah, that's another really thing that I think a lot of people don't really understand about our lives. We think it's just about us.
Hmm.
It's just for me. It's for my growth. It's for my whatever, and it
Yeah,
is partially, but it's also about the people in your soul group, in your collective, whatever you want to call it. And we do.
we're
I
all
think
connected.
yeah, we're all connected. And
Mhm.
so someone will say, I will be the baby that is stillborn, or I'll be the
Yeah.
one with Down syndrome, so that you can learn how to care for me or whatever.
So you
Um,
learn the
and
compassion.
and we
Yeah.
all and we all get something out of it. It's not like there is
Hmm.
sacrifice, but there's also something to be gained from either perspective.
Yeah, there really is. And each time we learn something different,
Hmm.
something we didn't know before. And I think that that's the beauty of it, really, is that I don't know that there's like this grand design that it's all predestined. I don't think so because I think there's a lot of free will involved. But I
Hmm.
do feel that the connections are always there. Those are eternal. And that all of us have a connection to each other. Even the worst of us are connected in some ways as a way of teaching us how we don't want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say we can learn from everybody.
Yeah,
And sometimes we learn what to do and sometimes we learn what not to do. So
exactly.
everybody can be, I forgot the exact quote, but either you can be a great example or a
Mhm.
big warning, right? So I
Exactly.
look at certain people and I'm like, yeah, oh, you taught
Mhm.
me something that I don't want to do. I do not want to be like that.
It's funny because I'll look at people sometimes and I'll say, "Oh, you didn't get the memo about last time, did you?"
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's okay. That's the way we can bless it and move on and hopefully not hold it, inside because I think I think that that's what too many people do. And the internet has made it so easy for people to just attack each other without even knowing each other and not even feeling the connection of the energy between us.
Hmm. Right. Right.
And, that's unfortunate. I hope that in the future it gets to be, I hope that we return more to those roots of finding the commonality and, you know,
Yeah, the internet is a really interesting thing. I think it's there is bad.
Mhm.
You've got the keyboard warriors that say and do things that they would never do in real life.
Yeah.
But also I've got hundreds or thousands of friends all over the
Mhm.
world that I would have
This can be
never met,
wonderful.
and I've
Yeah.
never met in person. And some of them are some of my best friends.
Me too. Me
And
too.
they live in
Yeah.
Australia or they live in England.
Right. Yeah.
So it does also it can bring us together in ways
Yeah.
that we can't even imagine.
That's
Uh,
for sure.
yeah.
It's like anything, you use it for the good and you get more good, right? You use it
Mhm.
for the bad, you get more bad. What we put out is what we attract.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly right. So I do want to ask you this question also because I
Sure.
love the color purple. As you can see, it's my
Yes.
microphone cover, and it's
Me
Shayna's,
too.
my daughter's favorite color. Before she
Yay.
was even born, we painted her room purple because I was like,
Awesome.
she's gonna have a purple room. So I know you're the purple
I love her
priestess.
already.
What's the deal with purple? Why are we attracted to it?
Purple is very spiritual color. It's the color of royalty, first of all, but so, it already has that like higher elevation to it, right? But purple is a very deeply spiritual color. It's the color of amethyst, which is a crystal that helps us to connect to our higher source,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's got a long and rich history in many different realms, but purple is that color that really resonates and it coordinates with the third eye chakra.
Mm.
And that is the chakra that, where you're using, that's where you connect, but it's also where you leave your body. That's a little secret.
Hmm.
I don't know
Wow.
if you knew that, but I'll
I
tell
did
you.
not. No, no.
So there were some girls that were and boys that were in an accident in Ohio several years ago, and this is a good illustration of it. And they it was one of those things. They went to Wendy's, too many people in the car, and it rolled over, and people got thrown out because no safety belts. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody died except one girl. The girl who didn't die was laying there, and she said what she saw angels bent down over the heads of each of her friends, and the angels were stroking where the third eye is,
Hmm.
and the spirit came out.
Hmm.
And she was wondering, where's my angel? Why don't I have one? And it was because she wasn't dying. It wasn't her time.
Wow.
But this is how we release is through here.
Hmm.
And it makes sense because, that's our highest level, but it's also our strongest connection to source.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we go home.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
It's like there's
interesting.
an imaginary hole there and we just, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So, we're coming to the end of our time. So tell
Mhm.
people, we've touched on what you do, and you've got some books also. So tell people about your
Do.
books, where they can find you, and what it is
Okay.
that you can do for them.
Well, the first place to find me is at thepurplepriestess.com.
Yeah.
So, that's my little home online. And it's still evolving. It's still, I call it an eternal work in progress.
Yeah.
And but the books that I do are available on Amazon, and I've got a lot of different books. Like I have one, the Everything Palmistry book. These are all older books. That I have the Everything Feng Shui book. So I've done a lot of different books on that. You'll see I also co-wrote Jessica Simpson's first wedding book. Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
Wow.
I've done a bunch of different things. This was during
Hmm.
my writing career. But the things I've done since then are the last book I did was the Little Book of Feng Shui with Simon and Schuster, and that's on my Amazon page.
Hmm.
And then the career conjuring book that I just finished and I did on lulu.com myself. And
Yeah.
that was kind of a little labor of love. And I was a career coach, a metaphysical, even career coach. So I would do people's charts and then also help them guide them into the right type of work that makes them happy.
Hmm.
So I had a business called Crazy Happy Work. That's what it was. And I helped them with that.
Yeah.
Um, AI has changed that business a little bit, but also Spirit dragged me the other way and
Hmm.
said it's time now to do this.
Hmm.
Um, Even to the extent that I went back to grad school. So I'm working on my social work degree to add that to the mix.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, yeah. At the age of 60, baby,
Yeah.
never too late. But the Career Conjuring book is really just a bunch of spells, meditations, and affirmations and things you can do to help you find and create the work that you would love doing. And it's something that I used to help me to do this career.
Hmm.
So, it's kind of a big deal in that sense that it was something that was a full circle project for me.
Yeah.
You know?
Awesome. Well,
Yeah,
it's been great getting to know you and having this conversation with you. Any last words
likewise.
you want to share with the audience before we sign off for today?
I think the most important thing is always, always continue your conversations. They're listening, they're talking. Sometimes you can't hear them, but when you get to the point where you can tune into that frequency, you will hear them or you'll have signs and know that they're always with you.
All right. Thank you. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, Brian. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.